technical issues. This is the open circle, and today we're here with the guest of the week, Shadow Sun. We're going to get into a lot of conversations about her path and her practice and who she is, what she's all about. But before we do that, let's roll that intro. Yay! There we go. Intro. All right. So, Shadow Sun, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about you?
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me. Apologies, I forgot about the intro.
No, you're good.
Hello.
You're good. This
Technical difficulties on my part because I just completely slipped my mind and I have my own technical issues coming in.
we're good. It's all good.
So, hi to all in chat. For those who do not know me, as Starlight was saying, my name is Shadow, or Shadow Sun, as is listed on the bio. I am a Pagan Wiccan Witch. If you want to get real specific, like I usually just say Pagan, but if I get specific enough, I mention that I'm Wiccan, and I also use the term witch. I am also someone who is a part of the LGBTQ community. I am also blind, and I live in California currently. Um, and a lot about my path and practice is very nature focused, but at this point in time, a lot of spellcraft, ritual, and lots to do with spirits and spirit work, if that makes sense. Any
Mm-hmm.
questions, feel free to continue. And also, for those of you in chat, feel free to ask.
So, Midnight Lace said, "Hey girls, nice to meet you, Shadow Sun."
Likewise, hey, Midnight Lace.
Hey girl. so, okay. I think it's really interesting, like that you mentioned that you work with spirits. I'm really curious if you want to like get into that later.
I am totally happy to get into that.
Okay, cool. Um, so so I'm looking at questions here. So, how did you come up with your YouTube name?
So I've had this name for quite a while on other platforms. A lot of it had to do with how I see physically, but also how I connect with both the sun and the moon itself. So I kind of see like the sun is a very vibrant energy, and the moon is sort of a very like connecting to the shadow self and also like the emotional aspects of a person. I also feel like it reflects me as an individual and me as a person who is of both light and shadow, like everyone else. But I feel like I wanted something that would encompass my path as it is today and as it has been always of light and of shadow, working with all things on all across the spectrum.
Okay, that's really cool. Um, do you find a lot of balance between like the sun and the moon? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I do. I feel like a lot of people talk about the moon, right? Especially early on in my path, I was looking
Mm-hmm.
for ways to incorporate it regularly. And the thing that people kept on saying was start with something regular, start with working with the full moon and the new moon and all of that. And I was like, wait, why the moon? What does this have to I mean, I saw it in books, I saw it online, I saw it in blogs, I saw it
Yeah.
everywhere. And they just encapsulated this whole thing. They encompassed the moon left, right, and center, but they never mentioned the sun anywhere. Even in books today, I see very few references to working with the sun, unless you're talking about like the solstices or certain parts of the year. You
Mm-hmm.
never really see the sun very much incorporated into anybody's path or practice. So I felt like, why can't I work with the sun? Like, why can't the sun be part of that? I mean, not everybody's totally into the sun. I completely understand that. I just think that there needs to be a balance in all things, and that includes working with both of those things.
Right? Because you can't have light without the darkness, and like the same is the other way around. You can't have the darkness without the light. You know what I mean? It's they kind of need each other. Um,
Exactly.
and you're absolutely right. Like solar energy and solar magic is vastly underestimated. I completely agree. Um, Usually it's all about the moon. Um, there, there should be more people talking about the sun. Because it plays a vital role. Um, so, um, what's your YouTube channel all about, and what kind of content do you create there?
So, my channel essentially is me sharing my personal path and practice from my own perspective as somebody who intersects within the like pagan community, the blind and visually impaired community, even the greater disability community to some extent, also being part of the LGBTQ community as well. I want to talk about like the intersectionality of those things, but I also want to share ways that people can build their practices from the ground up. It doesn't matter where you're coming from, whether you're in a
Mm,
tradition, you're not in a tradition, you're new, you're not, you're disabled or not. I want to promote inclusion because it's important. I think that the intersectionality of that isn't discussed. Or if it is discussed, it's one of those things. It's like they focus on one thing more than the other. So like they might focus on
mm-hmm,
like disability more than they might focus on the actual practices. Not to say that that's not a bad thing, just that it's okay to normalize it a little bit. Like, don't focus on like me being blind, for instance. Focus
mm-hmm,
on like how that lends itself to creative innovation in one's path or practice. So maybe I might use braille and not everybody does like use braille. Maybe I'm listening to an audiobook. In my case, I don't do that, but there are other people who might. There are people who
right.
might use other things to create sigils or to create their own spells that work for them. Even keeping something as simple as a book of shadows or a grimoire or a mirror book, like that could be adapted in so many different ways, but you never hear anybody talk about it because, or if you do, they're focusing on like, oh, how would I do that if I couldn't see or if I couldn't hear, or however you want to phrase it.
Right. Absolutely. Hello Trish at Beanbag Hagwag. It's nice to see you. Thanks for stopping by. And Midnight Lace also said there's so much power in solar energy, and she's absolutely right. Um, so sorry, I froze for a second. um, I guess I'm nervous.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's no problem. That's what happens when you have technical problems.
So, what inspired you to create your channel?
So I started out blogging in 2019, and I wanted another
Mm-hmm.
way to bring that in, but I also wanted another way to reach more people. I wanted to widen my audience, and I always loved YouTube and learning from other witches on YouTube. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching YouTube videos since I started on my path, so I was also nervous as well because I'm very camera shy. Y'all wouldn't believe it, but I actually am. I'm very camera shy, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
generally show that um, unless somebody can tell me otherwise. But I doubt it. I've been told that I'm not, or I don't seem that way. So it took a lot for me to actually make a video. And actually, my first couple videos, you don't even see me. You see like things I'm showing. My intro video, for example, shows some crystals that I own, some candles, things like that. I wanted to start out with sharing content that people wanted to see and like what I've seen people do, but also coming at it from like, how can I make this content accessible to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I make it so that it's very practical and reasonable? Not that other people aren't doing those things because they are doing amazing things, but I wanted to share my perspective and where I am on my path and where I'm going.
Right. I mean, some people can make stuff on the same videos, but it's the fact that it's yours and from your perspective that's what matters, because you're sharing your own point of view. And it's funny how like one topic everyone can do or feel differently, and that makes things like nice and diverse and different, and like that's good for the community. um,
I agree, and I think the other thing too, with even like the simple thing of either candle magic or just doing a very basic cleansing or protection spell, you could come about that from 5 or 6 different ways, but you can also come at it from 5 or 6 other different ways. So, like, I hope to do a series eventually on protection work and how you can do that in a very like everyday sort of sense, but also
mm-hmm.
in a ritualistic sense.
Okay. Yeah, like protection's like super important. So I'm looking forward to seeing your videos on that. That'll be good. Um, and Trish from Beanbag Hagwag said, "Oh, Alondra's here. Hi, Alondra."
Hi, Alondra.
Um,
And beanbag.
um, um, Trish from Beanbag Hagwag said, solar energy is important. Um, oh my gosh, I can't talk. The warm summer only lasts so long in Minnesota. Yeah, I bet it's cold there. It is a vital part of my practice. I can totally get that. You have a really long winter there. I think a little bit longer here, in PA, Pennsylvania. Like, I think yours goes like maybe weeks to months longer of more coldness. So
That
I
would
totally
be
get that.
don't know how anybody does that.
Come visit in the winter. See what it's like.
Yeah, I think I need to do that anyway, just so I could get some exposure, because it sounds like terrifying. It's almost like the equivalent of people being scared of earthquakes. That's what I like equate that to, which is a valid thing, by the way. I live here. I live in a space where there's earthquakes, and I'm like, I'm gonna,
Oh,
I'm gonna move.
see,
I'm gonna get to my
that
nearest table.
that's scary. I don't know how. Oh, I'd be terrified. Oh.
You just gotta hit up your nearest sturdy object and stay there till it stops shaking.
Oy, I can't imagine. Like we have risks of tornadoes, but that's like really low compared to like earthquakes.
I think I'd be
So
even more scared. I'm good.
Ah, so how long have you been creating content for?
So I started my YouTube channel in 2020, and I did my blog the year before. So just over 2 years. I just
Okay.
did it back in March. I did a YouTube video on my 2-year anniversary. I was super nervous. The first video I ever made, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna do it. And I made like 4 videos before I just settled on this one. I said, no, I'm just gonna publish it.
I get that. Like you get the jitters the first time. I totally understand. um, Echo the saving sorceress. Hi. Thanks for
Hi,
stopping by.
that's an awesome name. I love that. I want to know
Yes,
where.
you should.
Can you tell us where you got your name? I'm sorry.
um, you should check out their channel. They do a lot of upcycling, and it's interesting. But she said, they said hi everyone. I'm so glad to finally catch one of these lives. So thanks for stopping by. um, I don't know why I'm so nervous tonight. Like this is more than normal. Um, we had a lot of technical difficulties, so so um, what direction do you see your channel going in the future?
So, like I mentioned earlier, I want to do a little bit more like series content. I did stuff on like blindness in my own practice. I've done
Mm-hmm.
a crystal series that I wrote about a couple years ago that I also want to do more content on crystals. I also want to do more content on like working with spirits, working with deities, giving offerings, and I also want to just side note this with if you hear noise in the background, that's construction. Um,
Okay.
just in case you hear something. But that being said, I also want to eventually go live on YouTube. I want to do some live stuff eventually, but that's kind of further down the line. But currently, in the more near future, I'm hoping to do something for like newer witches. I also want to do stuff for people who are a little more experienced. I want to do something on protection work, candle magic, as someone suggested in one of my other videos. I'm definitely going to do something on candle magic. It might be sort of a two-parter because candle magic
Hmm.
is this huge topic.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of ways you could go. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what you do. So like let us know when you post that. Um, do you have any goals for your channel, like long term goals?
Yeah, my goal for 2021 was to get to at least 100 subscribers, and I already passed that, so I'm like super thrilled.
Yay!
This year, I'll be happy if I can get to 3. If that can happen, that would be nice. Um, I also want to do more things on like magical texts, so like grimoires, books of shadows. Like I showed my current book of shadows, but I want to like show people ways to create them like from the ground up. Not making a book, done no, nothing like that because I'm not that creative.
Mm-hmm.
I could make something work, but I just how to organize it, how to make it unique to their own practices. I want to share my own celebrations of like the Wheel of the Year, how those work in my practice. I also want to do some vlogging from time to time, a little more on like
Okay.
intersectionality.
I'm looking forward to that. Okay. Give me 1 second. Um, oh my gosh.
I'm just looking at the
So
chat.
Echo the savings. I cannot say your name. I'm so sorry. Echo the saving sorceress said, "Thank you so much. Uh, thank you so much for the welcome. My name refers to how I use the oh the chat moved. How I use things to transform them into new things. Can't wait to check out your videos, Shadow Sun."
Awesome. That's a really cool description. I
Yeah,
check out your channel now.
yeah, they upcycle and do some amazing things. So, and I'm saying they just because I don't know pronouns. So, um, just to be respectful in general. So, um, okay. So, is there anyone within the YouTube community that inspires you?
There's a lot of people.
Okay.
Um, I'm gonna go with the people that I've been really watching right now first, and I'll just kind of go a little bit further back, if that's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, hi, Witch of Enchantment. Hello, Justin.
Hey, Witch of Enchantment! Oh my goodness, I love that. It's funny. I was just about to bring them up. So a lot of the people that I've been watching are like people like the Witch of Enchantment. If you haven't
Hmm.
seen him yet, go, and also check out Wine and Witchcraft. Check out Drunken Divinations. They're amazing. They're a collaboration channel. So Wine and Witchcraft and Drunken Divinations are collaboration channels. They don't do them. They sometimes do them together when they cross over, but they're amazing. They so wine and witchcraft is all things like witchcraft, and they have wine, and they're just the way that they describe it is like a witchy bar, and I totally agree with that. Drunken Divinations is
Yeah.
the way you think it is. It's people drinking and doing readings, and they're amazing people. I love also the Sunshine State Witch, who is also really
Hmm.
amazing. I
Love
love,
her.
yeah, of course, Starlight Spellsinger as well. She's really great videos.
Oh, you're gonna make me blush.
I mean, this whole like open circle thing is amazing. I
Aw,
love.
I'm so glad.
I know she's not doing too many YouTube videos anymore, but Ravenflower is also really good. Check out her past videos. Cricket Song, who is formerly known as Lunar Wisdom, is really good. I started out watching her, as well as May She Rest in Peace, Tiptoe Chick, who was phenomenal. I never got into the herb thing, but I did learn a lot from them, just more like on a practical sense. Um, Taya Kennedy, and of course, shouting out to Beanbag Hagwag in the chat. Man, I'm telling you, I could go on. Like, I could sit here and have a thing. Jasmine Ambrosia, if you don't know
I
who she
love
is,
her.
oh, you need to go check her out. Just like you need to go check out Allvine Green. You need to get on that, and Avalon
Mm-hmm.
Cameron as well. Those are all amazing channels. So if y'all need a reference list, I'll somehow get it to everybody. But seriously, all y'all are amazing people.
Oh, cool. Yeah, they are all amazing and wonderful. I totally agree.
And I'm also
So,
recently subscribed to Alondra.
oh,
Whenever they make
Alondra,
videos, make the videos.
make those videos. No pressure.
When you are ready and feeling ready, you definitely. I'll be super
Sh-
thrilled.
She'll get there. I know she will. I believe in her. Um, so I lost my place on the notes. Give me 1 second. Okay. So, do you mind elaborating a little bit on what your disability is and how it impacts your practice?
So, for those who don't know, I am considered legally blind. I have really low vision. So, I have good central vision. I can see everything in front of me, but I don't get a lot of details. So, everything looks kind of interesting. Like, I literally have to go super close to stuff to try to look at it. And most of it is very blurry. It's almost like, for lack of a better description, it's almost like taking the worst picture you've ever taken with an out of focus camera, that like the further away you get, the worse, the less you're going to see. And
Okay.
even the closer that you get, the you'll see something, but it's very undefined. um
Okay.
yeah. But in addition to that, I also am somebody who has Crohn's disease. So for people who don't know what that is, and I do talk about that on my channel because I'm trying to raise awareness about it. It's essentially an autoimmune disorder that affects the GI system, among other aspects, and it can be debilitating if it's not treated, and even if it is treated, it can have potential issues as well. Just you
Mhm.
have periods where you're in remission, where you don't have any symptoms, and you have periods where you're in flare up when you have symptoms, ranging from like abdominal pain to like, I like to equate it to somebody having food poisoning but worse. Like, imagine having food poisoning and then the pain and everything else you get with food poisoning, but it's like, if it's severe enough, it's like 24 hours a day. It's just
Oh
nonstop.
dear. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it can get quite interesting. The good thing though in my case is that I am in remission right now, so I don't have any symptoms at this point.
Mm.
And there's no cure, so it's not like you could just take something and you're done. Um,
Right.
and
It's
as far as
chronic,
like,
right?
yeah, it's a chronic illness.
Mhm.
And as far as that goes, like that doesn't always impact my practice. Although right now, because of the pandemic, I kind of keep a low profile just because I am considered compromised. So I tend to
Mhm.
be pretty like low key. Like, I do go out and I do stuff and I do, travel and do what I need to do. But it just depends. I mean, I'm also a working person, so I tend to be focused on that quite a bit. And as far as like my visual impairment and like my blindness impacting my practice, that gets a little interesting. I think it mostly impacts me when I'm looking at more like visual things. So, learning sigils is the example I like to give. Learning how to create sigils that make sense. I'm learning a different way to adapt that. That's a tricky one because, I mean, yeah, it's letters and numbers in theory, right? Like, you pare down the numbers from like 1,000 consonants to all these different things, so it becomes one symbol. Is what I understand the base concept is.
Well, there's several ways. That's
Yeah,
one of the most common ones, absolutely. Yeah.
right. You would think that that would be easy given the fact that we can type. I mean, in theory. But I mean, not everybody. I mean, in my case, I wouldn't have the ability to go and like do all of that like with handwriting. I could do it with
Yeah.
typing, sure, and I could do it with a bunch of other ways, and I'm still learning little ways to do that. I'm thinking of doing it in a more tactile sense to make it a little more like cemented in the physical so that when I create it, I'm able to create it in a way, and then maybe I can pare that system down into something that will make it more refined so that it's being able to do it on the go or something. And even like participating in a coven is another example I like to give. Not everybody has the ability to go and find people like where I am. There's not too many practitioners out here that do coven stuff that I know of. I
Mm.
mean, it's few and far between, or you
Mhm.
have to drive or get somewhere, and as we all know, it's not cheap. It's
Right.
not cheap right now. We're in inflation. I mean, everything's going up. Eventually, I'd love to go into a coven setting just to get the experience and see what that's like. But that isn't how it's happening.
I have some concerns about like a real life coven setting because like okay, like say it's more like Wicca based, right? Where you're like passing around a chalice and they're like, "Here you go." Okay.
And
Where?
then you're like,
You know
where
what I
is
mean?
it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, is it to my left? Is it to my right? Like, as a
And then you knock
fellow
it over.
yeah, yeah. As a fellow legally blind and visually impaired witch, I get it. I can totally relate, and it's concerns and people unintentionally don't know, because it's not their situation, so it doesn't correlate, if that makes any sense. Like they might not know how to correctly deal with a situation, so you might have to like inform them, and sometimes that can be really awkward. But where else are you supposed to get if you don't self advocate? You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest thing there would be like being upfront. Like, hey, like if you are willing to take me on as a potential member, this is the thing that you need to
mhm,
understand. This is how you need to direct and give information and insight to. One of the people that really inspired me when I was wanting to blog, and I need to find the link again, but there is a blog out there because I tried to find other resources to share around to help other people in the community and just
mhm.
raising awareness, right? So I found this blog. It's called Pagan Practice for the Blind and Visually Impaired by Ari. I forget how to pronounce her last name. They're an amazing writer. She has a whole blog post on that, and it talks about like coven, a little bit of the group setting, and also adapting things like altars and candles and fire safety. That was so inspirational that I was like, this is what I'm talking about. Like this is right here with just being able to be open and like straight with people about what you need. So like I tell people, don't assume that one person will need the same thing, like in general, right? This is not disability specific. It's like I need you to remember my, I don't know, my pronoun is like she, like in my case my pronoun is she and her, where somebody else will say, well, I need you to remember that my pronouns are they them. Well, that's
Mhm.
just a basic thing, right? Or being able to remember to address them by their name, like their preferred name versus their actual name or what have you.
Right.
Those are not specific to the disability community, those are specific to other communities. Or on a more fundamental level, we could just say, I just need you to remember that I need a little more detail because I don't see well enough for that. While somebody else might say,
Mhm.
I just need a little bit bigger so I can read what you're reading to other people. Or I need you to be a little more like hands on with me because that's how I learn, because I'm a kinesthetic learner or I'm a tactile learner. Like everybody learns differently. It's about meeting people where they're at in general and just
Absolutely.
taking, I mean, for those people, and it's kind of controversial, but I'm not for the people who use identity-based language, there's nothing wrong with identity-first language. So saying like I am autistic or I am blind or whatever, that's your
Hmm.
prerogative. That's not mine. I don't prefer to do that. I like to use person first because if you sit here and focus on being like if you make it a bigger thing than someone else, all they're going to focus on is the vision issues or the hearing issues or whatever the issues are. It's about meeting people where they're at in general, like meeting the people that you're working with in a coven setting, right? Saying, okay, what
Hmm.
don't they know? What don't they know? Because I'm sure that you meet anybody on the street, they're not going to know nothing, right? So you have to start from the very beginning with some people. You have to be like, okay, I need you to tell me which way the chalice is before I knock it over. Or I need you to tell me what candles we're using so that I know the best way to approach the altar. Where are the candles? Or where is the circle of candles? Because what if they cast, like if you're in a Wiccan setting, what if they use candles to mark the circle and they're lit? And you've got
Yeah,
somebody who has no vision whatsoever who wouldn't even know,
it's
right?
a
Like
safety issue
yeah,
too.
it's a
Yeah.
safety issue. So
Hmm.
being able to direct and just say, oh, the candles are at this perimeter, like let's just say traditional circle, like maybe 9 feet, 12 feet, we'll just say, being able to tell them where they're located as they walk through the space, or being able to let them walk through the space ahead of time. Being communicative really is all what it boils down to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, like, if you don't communicate your needs, they're not going to get met. You have to advocate for yourself. But if they like, don't communicate with you, how are you going to adapt to the situation? You know what I mean? I do want to ask you also, do you feel like there's misconceptions regarding blindness, in your opinion?
Yeah, there's lots. I think in a general societal sense, a lot of the stereotypes exist that people don't want to necessarily acknowledge societally. So I read a lot about this um, for different things. And one of the things that I read, especially in the employment situation, is the attitudinal barrier of employers themselves. And there's nothing, people are going to be people, you can't control that. It's
Hmm.
how we respond to the attitudinal barriers of those employers. And I understand their hesitation for hiring us. It doesn't mean that I agree with it, it just means I get it. Because
Yeah.
there are some people that don't have the resources to get training on blindness skills. That's not
Hmm.
no one's fault. That's just a situation. Sometimes people just don't have the option. Sometimes they do and they don't want to take it. That's their prerogative. But the attitudinal barriers exist not just in the employment sector, but in every sector. I mention employment because it's a huge issue. And
Hmm.
the other one of the biggest misconceptions is like everybody who's blind has the same degree of vision. That is not the case. That's why in like one of my first videos about blindness and my practice, before I even delved into the conversation about interaction, I started saying, let's break this up and break this down. Not everybody has the ability or has the same ability to see the same things. I might see well enough to not hit the nearest pole, but somebody else might be able to see well enough to not only not hit the pole, but read the sign with enlarged text. And somebody else right next to me might not see a single thing and navigate just through something else. It's not a one size fits all. That's one of the biggest misconceptions that everybody seems to forget. The other one is that we're all like exceptional at hearing and all that. Like those are the things that people would be surprised to know still exist. Those
It's
things still
funny.
exist.
The Witch of Enchantment said, when people noticed that my dad was blind, people would start talking to him louder, and my dad said, "I am blind, not deaf." I've gotten that before.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, or
that's a huge one.
they'll talk to the other person. Like, what would they like to order? Instead of talking to you directly, it's like, "I can order my own damn food, thank you." You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's my biggest one that I
Oh.
love to reference. I also love to reference the everybody who is blind or visually impaired uses the same medium, like to read. Like I made a video on how I read as a blind witch, and I specifically titled it "How I Read," because not
Mhm.
everybody who's blind and who's practicing witch will read the same way. I'm not an audiobook person,
Mhm.
and that is important because I like to use braille. Not everybody will. Not everybody
Right.
can. Not everybody has a resource for that. Just like
Absolutely.
not everybody will use audiobooks or in large print books or even like hard copy books for that matter.
Mhm.
I like to point to people assuming things, like presuming they can't do this. So, like, I got a reading one time with this really nice lady, and I didn't mention that I was blind until later. And the only reason I mentioned it is because it came up in passing for one reason or another. I don't even remember what the reading was about at this point because it was like so many years ago. But I
Mhm.
mentioned it in passing. And one minute she's saying you can use candles to help you, like different color candles. And I just started on my path. Keep that in mind. This is like maybe a year in. And I had just, I was living in a place where candles couldn't be lit.
Mhm.
And it just was a whole thing. Or if I did, it was like very seldom. That being said, this woman went from saying, "Oh, you can use this candle," that no, use a stone, use a crystal, use it. I'm like, no. I've used candles, but no, because you can burn yourself. This and that. I'm like, oh my, no. We're not doing this. I said we're not having this conversation like this. And I just kind of told her like, hey, I can use a candle and that's fine. And we moved on to the rest of the reading. But it's those little things, right? Little tiny thing of what if I want to use a candle? I mentioned in one of my other videos, I can't remember which one, but it's like, how all the books say, all the older books especially, would be like, you can use a match. What if I don't have matches? Not everybody has matches these days. You'd be surprised. The household matches used to be a thing, but they're sort of seldom now. Like I went and got matches because I didn't have access to a lighter for a while. I
Mhm.
use the little Crocs. The brand is Crocs. It's those teeny tiny, like 2-inch lighters. I should have brought it over.
I'm
It,
holding up a
it
thing of matches.
yeah. See, there you go. Like you holding up matches. There you go. That whole bit. Like not everybody uses matches, or I use the Crocs tiny little lighters that you can use it to light candles, a grill, or whatever. And I use
Yeah.
matches from time to time. That's just a thing. People don't realize it. The other lovely misconception that I love to point out is that people think that like people were saying, you talk to other people instead of you, or they yell at you. I love the ones that go, can you hear me now? You know what? Yeah, I can. I
Hmm.
sometimes I'll be like, yeah, I can hear you just fine. I sometimes want to just be like, what where do they come up with this? But I know where it comes from. It has to do with, like I said, stereotyping and the lack of awareness and just assuming left, right, and center everything.
Yeah.
Not sure if that makes sense. That's a whole tangent. We can go into a whole conversation about misconceptions left and right.
Also, the Witch of Enchantment, he said that his dad hated when people treated him like he was a child. Um,
Oh my God! Thank you,
okay,
Wiccan Enchantment. Thank you for that.
just
That
because
is
you don't have just because you have a disability does not mean you're helpless. If anything, you want to strive for independence even more, so you don't have to depend on people. Just saying.
no. I agree
So,
with you. I agree with you. I think that goes back to like just people having this presumption of like you can't do XYZ. Part of it is culture. Part of it is societal. Part of it is just people not getting out there and just doing their own thing. And that's also very like that's everybody's prerogative. Not everybody wants to go out and do stuff, and that's perfectly fine. Everybody's situation is different. But it's also
mhm,
just you got to be able to make a decision at some point about what you want to do. Like, do you want people to treat you this way? Because no one talks about this in general, right? Non just like speaking more broadly. No one talks about agency
mhm,
and voicing their whatever. No one talks about agency, voice, like being able to speak up for themselves. We're too busy and I mean maybe this culture now is different because you get a lot of inclusion stuff happening here. Like you have people that are being more inclusive, but you're not seeing. But you still have people who won't, who are too scared because they've either been taught at some point in their life through whoever that they, I can't do this, I can't do that. No one will take me seriously. This and that, and
Mhm.
that includes being treated like a child. It's completely unacceptable and unnecessary. And the way that I learned to deal with that is just by telling people, like, look, this is not okay. I like to point to consent specifically.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a thing in general that people don't talk about enough. But like when you're walking down the street and what I like to call the street hustle, and you're at the corner, you're waiting, you're listening, you're doing your thing. And the next thing you know, you got somebody grabbing you by the arm and pulling you because they assume that you can't do XYZ to cross the street.
Ooh, ooh.
No, we're not.
I've
No,
never
I'm
had
like,
that happen, but I'd beat their ass if they tried.
oh no, I've literally like and I
Oh,
don't recommend this. I do not want to hurt somebody if I can avoid it. But if you're this is my boundary. Like this is my personal space. I understand you want to help me, but you're not helping anybody. I remember talking about that in another video. Like, don't grab somebody. Don't put your hands on nobody. Like that's not okay.
yeah.
No,
Uh-uh.
and more to the point, ask. Like going back
Mhm.
to the coven situation, ask questions. Break down the barrier by asking, and the other person breaking down the barrier by speaking about it. Like we're
Mhm.
having this conversation for a reason because people don't know. And it's just
Absolutely.
adapting your life to where it's at. Your practice is where it's at.
Mhm.
Whether you knew or experienced, you had to learn some way of doing something. I mean, look at the pandemic. The pandemic is a good example. We had to adapt to a whole new way of living. Everybody did. We're all in the same boat, whether we realize it or not. Whether you're disabled or not, we're all in the same boat when it came to that pandemic because it did affect everybody differently, definitely. And I will say, and I will acknowledge that people in this black community did struggle because I did read a lot of things about barriers to education and employment and everything else that were already there, but the pandemic highlighted them even more.
Mhm. You're absolutely right. Um, Echo, the saving sorceress, I said it right this time, yay. Um, she said, I agree so much, and people have gone from treating me like an adult to pretending I'm no longer in the room and just speaking about me, just speaking about me to others um, when they find out I have a disability. That's uncalled for, honestly. Like, why? You're a person. You know what I mean? Like,
I've had it happen to me, so I can agree with you. I know how that feels. It's very dehumanizing.
yeah.
People just have the audacity, and that's when I'm like when I go to places like a restaurant, a coffee shop, and they're like, so what does she want to eat? I want a Belgian waffle and a side of hash browns, yeah. Or I want a cup of coffee, or I want a a green tea matcha latte, like with
Mhm.
soy milk, please and thank you. Like plain and simple, you just say something, and it's scary the first time you do it. Life makes you vulnerable. That's what I like to tell people, and it's scary to think about, for even for myself. This is because I want to tell everybody this is not. I'm like no one's perfect, myself included. I struggle with being vulnerable, but speaking up makes a big difference more than you think. And if you have to be assertive, notice I said assertive, not aggressive, but because everybody has their own stance on it, and you do
Mhm.
you. But if you have to be assertive and say no, then you say no, and you make it very clear to people, no, not okay. Don't do this, don't do that. Just say something. When I go to like medical spaces or I go to any place and people start talking to my friend or whoever, yeah, I'm gonna tell you something. It's not your business. It's not my friend's job, or it's not my family member's job, or whoever's job to speak up for me. It's mine.
Absolutely. Like, I just because you have a disability doesn't mean you're helpless, and it doesn't mean that you can't speak up for yourself. Like,
And that could take a really simple form too. Like just saying, you know what, I appreciate the offer for this or that. Like if somebody offers you help, you just say, you know what, I appreciate it, but no, thank you. And if they persist, sometimes I'll just walk away. And if they start following me, then I'll start saying something because you don't need to follow nobody. Not your
Yeah,
job, not your business, not your concern. I'm not no one's responsibility but my own, you know? Don't follow nobody. If someone says no, don't get offended. I said that in a video too. I'm like, don't get offended. If we need help, we're gonna ask. It doesn't matter what disability you're
absolutely.
having. That's like a even in general. If somebody's lost and they're asking for directions, they're gonna be the ones seeking somebody out. You're not
Yeah.
seeking them out. Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like that also goes back to just interacting with people, even a potential. Like, let's say you go to like three different covenants and they all do the same thing. You're gonna have the one that won't treat you that way. Like you're gonna have every community has their issues. This is not a witchcraft specific thing. Every community has a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our biggest thing is they need to talk more about, yeah, disability awareness 100%, but also talking about the importance of speaking up when something isn't right. Like it's like when you say when you're looking for a coven, you're looking for red flags. If something doesn't feel right, then say something or just leave. You always have a choice.
Absolutely.
You always have a right to leave.
Yeah. And like it's nice that people like it's okay to empathize, but it's not okay to like not hear you out. You know what I mean? Or like over empathize too. That gets me. That gets me annoyed. This is a heated topic. Um so
I agree with beanbag hagwag. By the way, it is rude. The way people are, it's not okay.
mm-mm, not at all.
Thank you, Witch of Enchantment, because I'm looking at the chat too, and it's saying you help someone within the boundaries that you
Boundaries.
set. No one should ever invade someone else's space. Agreed, 100%.
Yeah. That's a big thing with consent, you know what I mean? Like for some reason with people with disabilities sometimes consent goes out the window and
Yeah, they think they're doing the right thing, and I totally understand that there's people that just don't know. But
yeah.
that's why there's so many options out there. I mean, you'd be surprised how many, and there's people who are changing that too. There are people, you look at TikTok, you look at YouTube, if you type in anything related to any disability, there's people that are changing those narratives.
Mhm.
They're reclaiming that, and they're doing good things by showing up and saying like, this is how you interact, this is how you don't interact.
Absolutely. So are there any accommodations that you make for yourself within your practice?
Yes, in my practice, a lot of it has to do with working around things I didn't have access to or research. So I would love to and
One
just,
second. You're lagging out.
oh
Um
no, how about now? Is it working?
it's still a little bad. Like the video quality got really like pixelated and your voice is like cutting in and out.
Oh god, oh god, it's really, okay, how about now?
It's a little better. Um
Okay, well, forgive the continuous technical difficulties.
it's been
Hopefully
happening
me
to both
talking.
of us.
Yeah, first it was me not being able to get in, then it was her not being able to get into the stream.
Okay,
So
I
we're
think we're good. I think we're
okay,
better.
cool.
Yay.
Okay,
Okay.
yay.
Woo.
Um, so so as far as like me not having access to certain things, so I would love to go in the middle of nowhere and just do my thing, whatever that is. I wanna,
Mhm.
do ritual in the middle of nowhere, like that would be fantastic. But it's not like I could just go and do that. I don't live in an area where that's like publicly available, and
Mhm.
privacy and all that. Like people aren't um, cool with you just doing a ritual. I mean, maybe they are now, and maybe there's spaces for that, and I just don't know that they exist here. But it's just one of those things. So I use what I have on hand. If it's me making an incense and all I have is like rosemary and sage, and I guess I'm going to use those, or I'm going to use whatever crystals I have on hand. Um, I generally will try my best to adapt things that suits the way I work and I do my working. So if I don't have access to, like, if we're going in a more traditional sense in the context of Wicca, like if I don't have access to a specific tool like an athame or something, I'm going to use my hand. I'm going to use something. I'm going to make it practical. I'm going to use a lighter instead of a match because it's what I have access to. Or I'm
Yeah.
going to use no candles or flameless candles. Like, there are places, believe it or not, where you can't burn anything because of
Right.
fire laws. Like,
Right.
I didn't know this until I watched somebody else's video on that. So they had to use battery operated candles. It might be something like that. Or if you're in a situation like an institution or something, or if you're in a hospital, like hospitals don't allow you to do that, I don't think. Or
Mm-mm.
wherever
No.
you're at. So it's adapting it in that sense. I have candles for days though, I won't lie. I love candle magic. It's like one of my favorite things. So even that, like getting access to herbs. I'll go to the grocery store. Or I'll try to go to my
Mm-hmm.
local witchy place, but not everywhere sells herbs, and not everywhere, like, not everybody knows how to use herbs safely. Or making oils is something I want to get into at some point, but it's very I don't want to say expensive, but it is expensive. It's like
It can be. Yeah.
it can be if you don't know where to go and you have to get them like quality sourced oils. Because I'm like very nervous about, like, because I would love to give people like topicals to help them with like protection oils or like oils they can anoint on things, but like you got to be careful with the skin and the sensitivity. So I do that in different ways. I might use a mister instead of an actual like candle warmer like diffuser thing because I have a bunch of those. But doing things in a very like pragmatic sense,
Mm-hmm.
making it practical.
Absolutely. Like making it work for you benefits your practice. Like
Yeah, like
makes
having a
things
hard
easier. Yeah.
copy Book of Shadows, for example. That's the one I like to point to. Because I used to have a copy of my grimoire and I lost it all in
Oh
a
no.
broken drive. It was a massive undertaking. Because it was like years of my practice. I mean, literally 4 to like 6 years of my practice just gone. Gone.
Oh.
And so I like but it was cool because it made me rethink how I did stuff. Like, I
Okay.
was able to turn that around. I was like, maybe I shouldn't do that ritual then. Maybe I should do this one instead, or make a whole new one. The
Right.
only thing that I hated that I lost from that was my dedication ritual. That was the only thing I did.
Aw.
That's the only thing that I missed. But adapting it, I don't use like a whole lot. Just maybe using tactile things like a tactile kit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
to draw out either like a diagram of how I want something to look, or a sigil, or maybe even making like a representation of something or somebody. I've even used like hard copy braille to make, like, if I'm doing a working for somebody, putting the name on it for something, or even using it to write the actual stuff from the working, whether it's a chant or an incantation. And even that is a form of bringing that into manifestation, right? Because you're writing it, you're physically writing it in
Mm-hmm.
some capacity. You're even speaking it, right? Like, that's an adaptation. The power of speech and being able to speak, even if you're using an adaptive device to do that, because there are some people who don't have the ability to speak. Maybe you're using like one of
Absolutely.
those things to, like, I forget what they're called. It's a machine um, that they use to like type out their things, and you can do that. That's a form of bringing, you're raising your energy and bringing it into manifestation, or
Mm-hmm.
drawing it out somehow, or making it bigger to see it better, things like that.
Right. Okay. Um. Yeah. Like. Oh, what happened here? Hold on. I just want to let you know it is almost 8:30. Did you want to keep going or did you want to wrap up? That's your call.
Oh, I can keep going if you're open to it.
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good for it. My husband that's adminning, feel free to go to bed. You don't have to stay up. We got this. It's good. Okay? I know you can hear me. Um
And thank you for admitting.
and then we got some mods too. We got Alondra and Midnight, so like we have help. Um
Thank you.
thank you guys. So um so can you tell us a little bit about your path or your practice? I know you mentioned that you are a Wiccan. Um, is there any more that you wanted to elaborate on?
Yeah, so like I will say that for me personally, the reason I identify as Wiccan is because when I was starting out, I felt like there was all this, I don't want to say it was discombobulated, but it was just a whole tumultuous amount of information, and I was not aware of the differences between all these different paths and practices. And at first,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't think I should be practicing this if you have to be in a group. Like, I saw all this material that said you had to be in a group and you had to do this or that. I would go onto message boards even and be like, "Hey, why does it say that I could be in like an individual and practicing this stuff, but then other things say I have to be in a group?" And it was like I caused a whole fire, and they were like, I mean, they would answer my question, I'm short. Like, they were really, really nice about it. Like, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I love those people. They were great. It was just the way that it was presented. It was like all these books would say these things. And then I found other stuff online. And plus, even my exposure to it, I saw a National Geographic documentary on Wicca, and it was just talking about greater witchcraft as a whole, and it got into like the cultural stuff, the regional stuff, and it was talking about Wicca, and even then it was in a group, right? It was just very traditional in a group. They were making incense. That's how I heard about
Mm-hmm.
Beltane for the first time ever. And then I got a book about solitary practice, and I just kind of took that structure and really felt like it made sense. Like the duality of God and goddess, however that looks, right? We're gonna take the gender out of it because I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
they're in my opinion, they're deities. Like they could be whatever gender, it's not a thing, and I know it's potentially controversial, but I think that it's important to just meet them where they're at. And I feel like for me, it gave me a structure, and it still does. It gives me something that it's like a framework. Like I know my boundaries. I know where I can go with this. I know where I can't. And I don't like to use the term eclectic, but I am eclectic. So I will pull from different things and I would do it within a respectable framework. I like, for instance, I use white sage, but I live in an area where white sage grows. Like
Right, right.
naturally. I'm around a lot of reservations. I'm not just getting it and appropriating. Like cultural appropriation is huge. I will not do that. I always tell people, you know, be respectful, learn and do the research, get the basics in, understand where these come from. And like I'm also incorporating things from my own culture into my practices.
Mm-hmm.
Little things. So I identify as Mexican because I am a Mexican. So that plays a big thing. Even though a lot of it is steeped in Catholicism, I'm learning about the practices of that area, whatever area it's in. If it's just general stuff on brujeria, aka witchcraft, then I'm gonna look at that. If it's curandesma,
Right.
which is basically like your general folk practices, I'm gonna look into it to see how they can be incorporated with respect to the culture that I'm in. For example, I celebrate Samhain, but I also celebrate in small ways the Day of the Dead
Mm-hmm.
and I do them separately because they come from very different cultural perspectives. Samhain is very Celtic in origin. The
Right.
Day of the Dead is Mexican in origin. It's doing little things like that to bring my heritage into it. And that's kind of where, and I also found as well when I was looking into all of this that I didn't realize how much the New Age was steeped into it in a way that people don't want to talk about. Like the New Age practices, like crystals. I feel like crystals have been used for oh millennia. I mean, honestly, people anthropologically used to use them to make spheres and other things to hunt and gather with. And even culturally, you can see things still made out of flint that were used. Flint is the one that I give example to because it's the one I remember. Um, and so for me, I feel like Wicca gives me something to fall back on. It gives me something that provides a great deal of meaning. It feels like it aligns with my beliefs as they are currently. And I feel like it's the balance between like connecting with the divine and being able to co create,
Hmm.
magically speaking. Like I'm able to connect with divine and be devoted to the deities that I work with, and I'm also able to connect with the land around me and work within that and be co-creative and manifest what I want.
Okay. Um, See, I like that you forge your own path and practice and make it yours. I think it's really interesting how those things intertwine for you. Um, so, like, what what brought you to witchcraft? What led you to this path?
So when I was younger, I was raised in a religious home in the sense that like I grew up with a lot of different things. So
Hmm.
I grew up with Mormonism, but I also grew up with like not having it at the same time because there was a point in my life where I wasn't as active. I did the whole baptism thing, and I have like nothing but respect for anybody who is a part of the Mormon faith. I have no issues with the religion as a whole. It just did not feel right, like in the sense of like I didn't feel as connected. And even when I was really young, I had a lot of experiences, like psychically speaking, so that kind of played into it. And I also just found like this connection to witchcraft, even if I didn't know at the time what it was. It wasn't until I got older and I was exploring different things. I remember I was reading some book, or I was reading some thing. It was like just after I watched the documentary and that all they had all those paranormal shows on TV because you
Hmm.
know that's where you learn things from. I mean, at least when I was younger, that's what I had access to. I didn't have access to the internet all the time. So when I found out about those things, I used a lot of those TV things to kind of give me something to be like, oh, maybe this can explain the experience I had. You know, it's not every day that you have the experience of connecting with those who've passed on or having the experience of, you know, having precognitive dreams or precognitive waking experiences where you have natural disasters that pop up and that sort of thing. So when I found Wicca in particular and paganism and the whole thing, I like the whole lot of it all. I found like, oh, this makes sense. Like, where was this? Where was witchcraft when I needed it? You know, my now fiance lent me this book. The book in question is Wicca Guide for the Solitary Practitioner. Um,
Hmm.
would I recommend that book now necessarily? I would for the structure, but not for like the historical perspective. But the structure itself is good because it gives very
Yeah,
solid practical advice. But I found that I've always been drawn to witchcraft, even if I didn't know it. It's a very subconscious thing. I feel like as much as I chose this path, I feel like it was something I was meant to do, even if I didn't know it as a young person.
I get that. I totally get that. That was also my first book too. um, so how did you like start working with spirits? I'm curious.
Oh, so that's a deep dive right here. So I
Ooh.
grew up with mediumship experiences.
Okay.
So because, and I want to dive deeply more into the mediumship side of that because I think, because when we were at least when I started practicing in around like 2011, 2012, I
Mm-hmm.
felt like you had to go outside of witchcraft to find anything on mediumship, right? Like anything psychic
Mm-hmm.
related, I felt like you had to just go into somebody else's space. And
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with spiritualism, right? Because I think spiritualism has its place. And I really do like spiritualism. I don't know enough in the sense of like I know some of the more basic things about spiritualism, but I feel like I could learn a lot more. I find that it's something I like to incorporate. I also feel that because of those experiences, it led me to working with like the spirits of not just the dead, but like the spirits of the land that I'm on, the spirits of my own ancestors. I really feel like it all kind of came full circle when I started practicing magic and witchcraft more like regularly.
Okay. Is that a big part of your practice too?
Yes, it is. Spirit
Okay.
communication and communing with spirit is a huge part of my practice because I feel like it's being able to like in the not just in the co-creation sense, but being able to pay honor and respect to them. Because I tell people all the time, they were here before us.
Yeah,
They are going to be here long after us. So they
absolutely.
deserve our respect too. They're like our neighbors. Yeah, we don't like all our neighbors, right? But these are not normal neighbors. These are beings, however the spirit is, whatever the spirit is, whether it's, the fae or, angels or, land spirits, the genius loci, whatever your spirit is that you're working with, that deserves respect, that deserves honor,
Mm-hmm.
that deserves the right to cohabitate with other people. We can't just be
Mm-hmm.
encroaching. Well, I mean, look what we're doing to the land as it is. But that's a whole nother conversation. It
Oh
still
yeah.
applies to the spirits and where they're at. I mean, yeah, not everybody's a nature spirit, 100%. But that doesn't mean that there's not spirits in the city. The spirit of that city, the spirit of the building you're in, the spirits that dwell in
Yeah.
that building that you're in. I like to respect where I'm at. If I practice in a new area, I try to leave something, whether it's, giving some kind of physical offering, energy, whatever it is, to say, thank you for allowing me to be here.
Mm-hmm.
When I used to be a student, there was an area that was around that was native land. A lot of this area is native land. So I would go to this like nearby plant. I would give that plant water every day. I'd be like, I know they're probably watering you, but thank you for letting me be around you and connect with
Aw.
you to say thank you because that is part of nature. That plant also has a spirit. I do have a little bit of the animistic
Mm.
aspects to it. I mean,
I was right about
even
to
the,
ask.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit of the animism, but also like look at the things that we use in witchcraft, right? If you work with crystals, those things come directly from the earth. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they grow, right, over time. They form over time. So those two will have the spirit of not only the earth itself, but it will have their own individual identities and how they work
I agree.
and how you work with them. Just like, I mean, I'm not gonna say like this is gonna sound very like far fetched, but like candles, I feel like we breathe our own, like not candles specifically, but just in general, when we're making magic, we're bringing energy and life into something. We're creating something
Mm-hmm.
like an egregore or a servitor if you're into chaos magic. Being able to do that, I know it's like sort of a tangent, but like spirits and communicating with them, I feel like every witch, regardless of your practice, you work with spirits in some capacity. Even if it's just a
Absolutely.
simple way of divining through, like some people throw bones, some people read runes, some people use a pendulum, some people use an Ouija, a Ouija board, or some people use scrying mirrors or using fire to scry. Either way,
Mm-hmm.
you're still communing with them somehow. Whether you'll get the response is different. It's subtle. It's so subtle that
Right.
you don't even know what's happening. Or it's so loud
Right.
you don't even know what's happening, i.e., your song skips like it did the other day.
Do you believe in spirit guides?
Yes, I do. I believe in spirit guides because I feel like everybody, in my mind, I feel like everybody incarnates with some form of group with them, like either whether they're guides or guardians, however you want to phrase it. I feel like spirit guides or, guardians or whoever you want to call it, I feel like everybody has somebody incarnating in spirit with them or coming in spirit with them to aid them to understand this existence as it is,
Mm-hmm.
to be fully manifested beings, and to be like what it is to be human and like to actually live in this world and connecting with those spirits and learning from them. Because you are learning from them. Just as much as you're learning from a book or learning from a YouTube video, you can learn from the spirits around you. Learning how to be still and how to just listen and learn and see. You'd be surprised what you'd find out.
Right. So, what is the way that you like to connect to spirit?
So I will use offerings similar to the way I use to connect with deity. I will use meditation. I'll use some type of divination source, but I'm very much an intuitive person. So I
Mm-hmm.
tend to use my psychic abilities and like the mediumship experience I've had to go into that. Maybe it's sometimes, very rarely though, it's trance. Very, very rarely. I haven't done trance in many, many years. But sometimes it's just me sitting and inviting them into the space and saying, this is for you, this is our time to commune and connect, and me to gain wisdom from you, but also to learn from you, and also to, even in some cases, if it's a spell I'm working on, to co create with you, like help me manifest work or manifest prosperity, whatever I'm doing, and giving offerings to them and thanking
Mm-hmm.
them for their assistance because you're working with them as much as you're learning from them.
Absolutely. I agree. Um, so, when was it that you first realized that you were a witch?
Honestly, when I was really young, I was a young child. I used to tell friends I was a witch, but I didn't really 100% know what that meant. And it wasn't until I started practicing. Um, I didn't identify as witch for quite a while, for like another couple of years, even after I started practicing like paganism and Wicca, because I was like, but what if I'm not? Like, what if this is all just, because I feel like I'm too analytical for this scene sometimes. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
this is not happening. My song didn't skip. My unplugged TV didn't turn on. Like, or like that spell didn't happen. I didn't get the money. It was already there. Like those types of things. But I feel like I knew since I was young. I've always known. It just took me forever to just be like, okay, yeah, I accept it. I'm a witch, and we're done. And it took me a while.
Okay.
Like I'd be afraid. I was afraid to wear a pentacle. I'm actually wearing a pentacle right now, the same one that I
Mm-hmm.
own. I'm holding it up. Um, it's just your basic pentacle, and it has the circle around it. It has all 5 points. I It took me a while to really embrace that because I was worried that I was like going to be like ostracized or something. But you know what? You'd be surprised how many people are like into it nowadays. Like if I was a witch, if I came into this path now, I would have been like, oh my gosh, people are so accepting for the most part. Not everywhere.
Okay, so Midnight Lace wanted to know if you're comfortable with sharing, what are some of your abilities, like your psychic abilities? Like,
Okay, so I like to tell people I am a psychic medium. If I want to get real specific, I tell people that I am a clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. And I'm
mm-hmm,
really diving deeply into clairsentience right now because I didn't realize until I took some stuff in mediumship that it was like super important.
yeah,
Like I feel like it's downplayed, and now I understand why. Because there's such a power in feeling, but there's also a power in seeing things too. I learned early on that I'm really good at remote viewing, and I didn't know that for many many years. I didn't even know what it was called. I was like, I don't know what this is, and then I read about it in a book, and a friend reminded me what it was called too. For like years later, those are the types of things that I do. I used to do readings more regularly, but I hope to get back into that soon enough. Um, more regularly. I used to do the occasional lost objects thing. Like I would tell people, I'm like, okay, if you want me to find something, you have to tell me in advance so that I know that that's what I'm doing, because I don't want to start with an intuitive reading or a mediumship reading and then diving into let's find my keys. Like I want to focus on what the person wants, and I get a lot of stuff for mediumship most of the time if I do readings for people.
Okay. You do readings?
I did more regularly, but I have done readings in the past. Like I did one on Instagram a while back on Instagram Live. So when I read for like people in general, I generally will do either intuitive. I'll do some mediumship, but I haven't done that like more publicly. But I will do like crystal readings. So I use regular crystals to read for people. So like the crystals you would use in a spell or something, I could take some
Yeah.
of those and do that. I want to get into that in my channel as well, like how to use those. I have a set of crystals that I use for those things.
Okay. Like tumbled
Yeah, like
crystals?
tumbled crystals, rock crystals, whatever I have. So like if I have, or just stones from the backyard, even, it doesn't matter. I can use whatever's on hand. That's where the intuition comes in.
Mhm.
Somebody is asking for a spell.
Um, I'm sorry,
Yeah, I
we're not
don't.
gonna dive into that.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm just gonna briefly say that I don't. I know you need the. I'm sure I could help you with the spell stuff. I can help you make one, but I don't do spells for people generally.
right, right. Um, so what do you think? I mean, there's still quite a lot of questions on the list, but we could do another session sometime, like if you want to come back.
Oh,
So
if you'll have me, I'm definitely happy to come back in.
awesome. So do you want to wrap up with like maybe two questions and um if anyone else has questions in the chat, feel free to put them in.
We could do one
Um
and one, no? Like
okay,
one from the chat, so people have an opportunity to interact, and also one from like the list. What do you?
absolutely. Sounds good. We'll do that. We'll do that. Cuz we can always have her back. um So if anyone out there has any questions for Miss Shadow Sun, feel free to put them in the chat, and we could we could pick one and then do like a closing question. So I mean, I'll just ask: do you have any advice for new or seasoned practitioners, or practitioners with and without disabilities? And this goes for like coven leaders as well, or like, you know, people with an authority sort of role. Um, do you have any advice you'd like to share?
Yeah, I want to tackle particularly like I'm gonna go like in order for the most part. So for the newer people, definitely I'm gonna say do your research, as everybody will say, but also get the basics of what you want to learn. If you want to learn, Druidry or Wicca or a Sadru or whatever your branch of witchcraft is, or you want to be a traditional witch, definitely get into the basics of those things before you dive. But also don't be afraid to dive and experiment with, understand where they come from. Don't be afraid to
You're
dive.
breaking up again.
Oh no, what is this? Thank you. We're just saying it also is working. Hello, testing.
Okay, say something again.
Okay, let's see.
Yay! Okay, we're good.
Oh,
We're good.
thank
Okay.
God. Yeah, so for the newer people, just get to the basics and core of whatever you're learning, whether it's traditional witchcraft, Wicca, Druidry, Norse paganism, whether it's eclecticism, and even in that sense, like do it respectfully, ethically, get really into it and understand where it all comes from
Hmm.
before you dive. But then once you understand those things, dive. Just experiment. Understand, like, it's okay to just learn and do the thing. If you mess up, you mess up, but you learn from messing up. Trust me, I was
Absolutely.
like terrified to do a ritual forever. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it anyway. You just dive right in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you might call the quarters backwards. Yeah, you might cast circle backwards. Yeah, you might set your, altar on fire. Don't, but you might. It happens. Everybody makes mistakes, and that's okay. Like no one talks about the mistakes. For this season, which is out there, I'm just gonna say I was very reluctant to go around and check out any other path. I say just check out a different path than your own that you're already on and
Mm-hmm.
explore it and learn it and see if it's something you could go down eventually. Even if you don't go down that path, you know how it works. And going back to basics is okay too. Like it's okay to just go back to the very beginning because you start with a foundation, right? With any house or building or whatever you're in, you start with some type of
Mm-hmm.
foundation. For like the people that run covens and groups, I want to say, regardless of whether the person has chronic illness, disability, whatever, don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to try something different if that person does have a disability.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's something, I know that closed practices have their spaces and they have their things, but I mean, traditions evolve all the time. So find a way to make it so that people feel like they're wanted and don't let your preconceived ideas be part of the situation when you're considering new people to
Absolutely.
your groups.
Alrighty. So, Midnight also said, um, would like to see you come back and your insights on your disability and practice. Oh, I would like to see you come back and see your insights on your disability and your practice. Sorry.
No, yeah, well, do highly recommend you check out um, the videos that I mentioned. Like, there's a whole playlist on my channel on like how I do different things. Um, I mean, not demonstrationally, but I definitely want to go into that more. And even for the people who do or do not have disabilities, like I'll just say one thing: if you do, try something, try anything, and even if you have to adapt it, if you're like mobility impaired or something, if you use some type of adaptive device, don't be afraid to bring that in into your practice too. If you use a thing to speak, like if you have a speech thing, don't be afraid to bring that in. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, magic is all about your will and your ability to focus and also being able to make change within that will. So if your will is strong enough, you're going to, work at it. And the people who don't have disabilities, uh, and you want to understand where we're coming from on stuff, try something to understand. Like even some of the energy work I've seen, like suggests you closing your eyes or covering your eyes or doing something. I mean, or whatever it is. Try something that may put you out of your comfort zone related to it so you know where someone else is at if they do have a
Absolutely.
disability, if someone is in your life. And don't be afraid to be like descriptive when you're making content. If you make content, like describe what you're doing and how you're doing it, because it doesn't just help the person who might not be able to see it, it also helps the people understand what you're using and why you're using it. You're
Mm-hmm.
able to dive deeply while also being inclusive. You're able to say, I use rosemary for protection because of this, and I place it into this incense because I'm adding it for protection alongside XYZ ingredient, whether it's like salt or whatever it is. If you're adding pinched rosemary to like your black salt or something.
Right. Being a little more detailed never hurts, regardless. I love that you said that's all inclusive because you're absolutely right. Um, all right. So I guess we're any closing words, any last final thoughts or
just want to say thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I also just want to say check out her channel, check out all the channels I mentioned, subscribe to them, check out my own channel. If you like what you see, please subscribe and, leave a comment. Let me know what you want to see. I'm always open to suggestions. You can DM me on Instagram. You can DM me on Twitter if those are open. So you can just DM me. Just let me know you're from this space and I'll definitely respond just because I've been getting some weird ones.
I love this. um, so you can find all of her links down in the description. There's the link to her YouTube, her Twitter, her blog. I think I forgot Twitter. I'll put that in there. Or your TikTok. I forgot something. But I'll make sure to add that in there. But you can find all of her links down below. And thank you all lovely people in the chat for stopping by. It's really appreciated. And it was a lovely chat. And thank you, Shadow Sun, for being a guest here on the Open Circle. It was awesome to sit down and chat with you, learn more about you and your practice. And I believe the next show is on September 3rd. I'll be having Dottie the Psychic. So that is when I'll be seeing y'all again. Thank you, Alondra. She said, thank you, ladies, so much.
I want Peach Cobbler.
Oh.
She said, thank you. Yeah, I could see it. I was like, it's a thank you, ladies, so much. I got working on a Peach Cobbler, such an amazing chat.
Nice.
And
Enjoy.
we all have slice in chat. Share it in the chat.
Oh, also, Alondra, share that. Please share your recipe in a Discord server. The Open Circle also has a Discord server. Let me grab the link and I can put it in the description real quick. So you can find a lot of stuff on the Open Circle Discord server. There's all sorts of different and invite people. Here we go. There's all sorts of different chats there. And there's a lot of fun conversations and magical conversations happening over there. Oop, there we go. There's the link in case you want to join the server. You can find Shadow Sun and myself there as well, and some of the lovely people that are in the chat are members of the server. It's totally free. There's no paywall. So if you'd like to join, there you go. We'd love to have you. It's an awesome community that we're slowly building. But yeah, more conversations happen over there. Anyway, thank y'all so much for stopping by, and thank you again, Shadow Sun. Take care, blessed be, and we'll see you next time.
Blessing.
Bye. Let me make sure this ended here. And yes, end broadcast. Okay, bye.